Okay guys, I'm going to show you everything I did to convert the stock 4C wheel here to the Giulia Quattrofolio wheel. This is actually just a standard wheel right here that I started with. I got this off of eBay for maybe $100, just in case it didn't work out. Wouldn't lose too much on it, and I could play around with it and destroy it if I needed to. So this is my starter wheel. When I first started or had the idea of switching to a QV wheel, nothing against the original wheel, it's a fine wheel. I just thought it was a bit bulky. Some questions I think you guys might have is how much larger is the QV wheel compared to the stock wheel? And as you can see, relatively, if you actually measure it one on top of the other, the wheels are very close in size as far as diameter. I think you got about a 1/4 inch around the perimeter larger, but the wheel itself is actually thinner in diameter than the stock one. So actually it feels and looks thinner overall. The biggest difference would be the cut down at the bottom. You can see the cut on the original stock wheel is cut a lot higher than the QV wheel. So that's one of the main differences as far as size goes. But as you can see, the reason why I don't like the stock one is because of how large the midsection is, and the radius around the perimeter of the wheel is very thick compared to the radius of the QV wheel. And also the center hub is actually a lot smaller in diameter than the stock one, and I believe that's probably due to the fact that they probably use airbags from a Fiat or older vehicle, which is why they're not sized to like a more modern wheel, like they did on the QV. So the airbag's a lot smaller in the center. The arms on it are a lot thinner than the stock ones. As you can see, the size of the stock ones compared to the new QV wheel. So you can get your hand around the wheel a lot easier on the sides and around the perimeter. And I just think it looks cooler is the main reason. And I did a really crappy job of wrapping this one with carbon fiber just to see what it would look like before I bought the QV wheel. So disregard the really crappy wrapping job that I slapped on there from AutoZone. So to get started, the first issue obviously is that the splines that go around the center of the steering wheel shaft here do not have the same alignment features as the QV wheel. So that's your first issue that you have to bypass to install a QV wheel on our steering wheel shaft. But I kind of found a simple, not much the best solution. Obviously, if you wanted to do it correctly, you could just machine out the splines where the alignment features are. So there's 3 alignment features, 1 at the top and 2 on the sides. And same on here, 1 at the top and 2 at the sides. But the center point to which this flat spot is different than the center point of this flat spot. So they do not go on the wheel at all if you try this. So my first idea, I had a couple ideas, but the first idea I just had was pretty simple. Was if I remove the flat spot or the alignment feature, which is basically just the splines go all the way around in a circle, and then there's one spline missing, creating a flat spot here, one spline missing, creating a flat spot here, and then one at the top, and that's your alignment feature for when you slide it onto the wheel. So if you were to just cut a groove where the flat spot is, basically opening up to a spline, you could then, you don't have to worry about the alignment feature anymore, and it'll go on just basically any wheel with the same diameter drive shaft or steering wheel column. So it's pretty ghetto, but what I first did with this wheel is I took a rather small file just like this. I used a triangular one too, and basically just went to the flat spot and just carved out a slot where the flat was, basically removing the alignment feature on all three. It's not very hard at all. This part here is made out of a very wouldn't say cheap, but very not so strong casted aluminum alloy metals make up the back part of the steering column, so it's very easy to cut. It's not hard at all. It basically cuts through like butter with the steel file. So it really took me about 5 minutes to carve out the three alignments, and it went on the first try, which was kind of surprising, and it worked really well. I tested this wheel for about maybe a month or two, driving around with it on to see if it would mess up anything, any of the splines or the splines on the actual steering column. And most of you are going to say, well, that's stupid, you're going to mess up your steering column and you're going to have to buy a whole new one. This is the stupidest thing you've ever seen. And I agree, it's not the smartest idea. But what I do know is that this is cheap casted aluminum, and what's on your drive shaft is actually made out of steel. Your drive shaft or steering column shaft has the stronger metal out of the two, so the only thing you would mess up would actually be the splines on here and not on your column shaft. You're not going to damage that because this is the weaker metal. So even if I did mess it up somehow, I'd only mess up the wheel and just put back on the stock wheel. So not a big loss. And I'm not saying anybody should do this. I'm just telling you what I did. A better way to do this probably would be to take it to a machining center and you could just have them, put 3 splines in for you. But this cost absolutely nothing. You can find these files anywhere, and you can file out the flat spots and make your own little spline with a sharp edge. And that's step 1. It gets a little bit more complicated from there. So once I got the wheel on, I thought, okay, I have something here. I can start basically developing the rest of the wheel, because then you got to figure out how you're going to attach the shift paddles at this point. Shift paddles aren't going to work on the stock ones, or you converting to the QV ones. They're just not made for it. So step number 2, I had to make a bracket for the back side that slides on using the hole locations in the back where it screws in. So those 2 slide into there, and then that fits flush on the back side here. And now I have a bracket on the back side of the steering wheel where I mounted up the ARD racing shift paddles that a lot of the guys use in the forums for when they convert to a racing steering wheel. I used the same one that they have, mounted it here, and ran the wires underneath and back through. And once I did that, these are my prototype shift paddles I made. They're just 3D printed plastics. I'll get to the finished product once I run through all of this. Then for all the buttons that go on each side, there's 2 sets of buttons in the QV model. Just a bunch of random buttons that you can't use anymore. So I deleted those and made my own plastic inserts that go on each side. So that was one step there. Then I had to create a bracket in the middle here. And this bracket here, what I made, holds my PCB I had to make for the new shift paddles. And the PCB is found on the forums. You can find that with a chart that shows you how to wire up your own board. It's a little difficult if you haven't done any electronic PCBs before, but if you can find some help, it's probably cost you maybe 15-20 bucks and a soldering iron, and you can make up your own PCB and hook up the racing shift paddles, or you can reach out to Max in the forums, and he sells a kit with the PCB and the shift paddles with the racing steering wheel already as a kit. I tried to buy it from him, but he wouldn't sell me his, so I ended up making my own for like 20 bucks. It's fairly cheap. You just have to figure out how to put together the PCB yourself, is the hard part. And I'm not selling this kit to anybody because this was way too difficult and too much money, to be honest. I'm just showing you how I managed to get the steering wheel in the 4C, in case anybody wants to give it their own shot at it. I'll tell you everything that I did to achieve it, and you're more than welcome to give it a shot. Of course, you don't have to do everything. You don't have to do the button deletes, and you could probably figure out somehow to bolt up the shift paddles to the back side, maybe even the stock ones. I don't know. You could just double-sided, you could duct tape them on there, sure. Just have the stock ones that are on the back here. Still have them on this one. And the other thing too is the reason why I did this project was because I really thought the shift paddles on the stock unit were kind of cheap. I mean, they're fine, they work. I mean, they're nothing special. They're probably found on a lot of cars that you buy today that are in the sedan range, or I mean, these are Fiat parts, so you know, it works. They're just not great. They're not metal. They don't feel great when you push them. So that was the second reason I started this project, was I wanted more higher end feeling shift paddles. And once I saw the racing ones everybody was doing with the racing steering wheel, I thought that would be a great idea to put on the QV wheel, and that would be about as close as you could get to having a QV wheel on your 4C for a higher end steering wheel. Okay, so way off track there. Let's go back. And so after I made this bracket, and you don't have to make this massive bracket. I made this bracket because I need to fit the PCB in the center. I knew I was going to need to mount all the wiring, and then I also wanted to do the LEDs up top for the shift paddle lights, because I can never seem to see or follow the dash shift lights on the stock 4C. I'm always just looking for something better, because I can never figure out when to shift. I'm always late, or I just don't see it at all when they light up. Part of it is the viewing. I was unable to even see the shift or even anything above like 3,000 RPM. I couldn't even see it because I'm about 6'2", so it was a little difficult to see through the steering wheel even at its highest point. I did do the modification though, where you put the washers in underneath the steering wheel and change the angle, and it gives you about another inch or so of angle towards the top, and that helped fix that problem. But I still have an issue seeing, I guess, being able to know when to shift, and I feel like that's kind of important. So once I made the bracket, the PCB hooked up the shift paddles, the aftermarket shift paddles from ARD, and also the LED I had mounted to the PCB as well, so everything was nice and clean. I welded everything up with the soldering iron. I wish I had another PCB board so I could show you what I made, but it's inside the wheel right now. And the last part, on top of here, there's 2 more screws here and here. I mounted the aftermarket horn to there. So the horn went right here. It's a rather large horn button. It's basically just a button. And then over top of that, I made my own hub that snaps into the original airbag center using the metal aluminum rods down at the bottom. So to unlatch it, you unlatch it just like the stock airbag, where you stick a screwdriver, a long head screwdriver, and you just stick it through the hole in the bottom, and then it releases 1 and 2 latches down at the bottom. So I got my hub here 3D printed with the 2 latch points, and this just sits down in there, locks into place, and then of course I have my deletes for each side that aren't in there currently, and that pretty much finishes off the wheel. So once I had all that ready, and I test drove this for about a month or so, I bought the QV wheel and then had that rewrapped in Alcantara and leather, and then put real carbon fiber pieces on it, not this crap, with the wrap, and had the LEDs installed. And next up, I'm going to show you the finished product so you can see it in the car and see how it looks. Let's go. Alright guys, I'm going to walk you through the finished product for the steering wheel. So this is the QV wheel installed in the 4C. You can see I used the carbon fiber cover pieces that you can buy off of Madness Autosports. Fitted it with that. I wrapped the steering wheel, had it rewrapped in Alcantara and just regular black leather, and then the hub I made myself through my supplier with the logo. Actually works. Yeah. And activates the LEDs as well. So one fault with the LEDs, for anybody else that had them installed, it runs through your horn. So one kind of stupid feature is that it requires more power than the horn actually makes or can supply. So when you honk the horn, it resets the LEDs every single time. Now I don't use the horn that often, so it's whatever. It's not a big deal, but if you're driving and you use the horn, then the LEDs automatically reset again and turn off and turn back on. So that's kind of silly and annoying, but I don't really use the horn, so it's not a huge deal. So what I left on the steering wheel, obviously I deleted the buttons and made my own slots for each side. I left the start-stop button. I could make this work. I'm a little hesitant because I would have to run a wire straight from the starter, and it could be a little sketchy based on how it would work. It would work. Basically, I would need to use the key still. I would need to put it to the on position, and then I could press the start button and start the car. So it's not impossible to make it work. Maybe I'll find a better solution so that I don't have to use the key at all. They sell a few kits for that. They're kind of cheap and from China right now, so they're not great. If you head behind, I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but so behind here, you got the ARD shift paddles right there, with a shift paddle that I made to attach it to. It basically works by a simple magnet here that keeps the shift paddle returning. So when you press it, it snaps back. Has a pretty nice click to it. Nice feel. You really know you've switched the gear when you hit it. It's very easy to activate, and it works from just about every angle that you can press it, which is pretty nice. So they feel great. As you can see here, behind was the bracket that I showed you and on the prototype wheel. So that runs along the back there into the other side where the other shift paddle is. And I got lucky because there was just enough room behind the wheel to fit all that. For some reason there was just a little bit of space there compared to our stock wheel, so I was able to make that bracket work and fit the shift paddle right behind it. So from the driver's view, you can see the shift paddles are just offset from the wheel. So when you put your hand here, I can actually get my hand in front of the shift paddle with no problem. Doesn't get in the way of anything, and they're very easy to snap and switch. And I think overall it fits in pretty well. Doesn't feel out of place. It's a part of the Alfa family steering wheel, so it's not like I stuck a Mazda Miata wheel in there or anything. And it matches my current interior. We'll turn it on and start up the LEDs so you can see those. And just so everybody that's wondering, I'm about 6'2", and steering wheel fits with no problems. My knees can get in and out with plenty of clearance. And even though that I moved the wheel, say, upwards, so that I could see the dash better, I actually moved the steering wheel back down a little bit because this wheel had more space underneath of here because the diameter of the wheel is actually smaller. So I was able to move the actual steering wheel back down a bit. And also I don't really need to see the shift lights anymore because now I have them on here. So I have the steering wheel moved back down, and I still have plenty of room to get in and out. Doesn't cause any now I would say the only thing that kind of I catch when I'm getting out of the car is actually the shift paddle here a little bit. If the steering wheel is turned down towards the bottom, I can clip it just a little bit if I'm getting out. But if my knee's in place where it's supposed to be while I'm driving, I can't hit my knee with the shift paddle. So they worked out pretty well as far as placement. I can also move them forward or back if needed. The shift paddle itself has room to go more forward, and I could also make them shorter if I really needed to, but as of right now it works pretty well without any issues. So we'll start it up and see what the LEDs look like. It's about to get loud in here, so you may not hear me in a minute. I don't have a cat back on this guy. So you can see it's a little loud inside the garage here, but it gives you some basic info, your RPMs, mile per hour, and you can go through the menus, and it gives you more options, temperature, engine, your turbo PSIs, how much gas you have, and you can also, I believe, go into settings and track your 0 to 60 and quarter mile times on here. So that's kind of cool. The best thing is that I can actually see when I need to shift, and that's the main reason why I got the LEDs. A lot of people in the forums are kind of crapping on the LEDs, and to be honest, they're probably not worth it, but for me, I could never figure out when to shift, and that's the main reason why I got them. So you can see if I rev it up a little bit. It's a little loud, and the neighbors probably hate me. So I'm going to turn that off for a minute before they call the cops on me. The stage two tune with the pops and bangs can be a little bit loud, and no cat. So that's pretty much it for the steering wheel. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you later.